Hey class, so in this lecture we're going to talk a little bit about Darwin's voyage on the HMS Beagle. Okay, so this was 1831 to 1836. So there's our time frame. So the first papers that Darwin published on natural selection and the process of evolution were early 1840s-ish. So, this is middle 1830s where he's accumulating a lot of data, and we'll talk a little bit in this video about how this trip influenced his ideas. Alright, so of course we're starting in Great Britain here, right? Here's our starting point up here in Great Britain, which was home. Hey, and then you can kind of follow this path, so I don't want to draw over the path other than getting us started. So we're coming down from Great Britain to the south. So then think about this path as we go through. So the entire eastern coast of South America, right? So we're kind of hitting, like, after setting sail, the first big landmass he encountered is South America. Eastern coast, down around Cape Horn, over to the western coast, up the western coastline, right? So all of that was new kinds of habitat for stuff. You would see lots of new plants, lots of new and different animals, but then also some things that were very similar to him, which I'll show you a couple in a second. So South America, and then leaving the west coast of South America here, then heading west, we end up at the Galapagos Islands, which of course is one of the famous things that Darwin's is associated with, right, is looking at doing stuff on the Galapagos Islands. So we're going to do a little bit with that in just a second. All right, so this is our location for the famous Galapagos Islands for Darwin's voyage. And then it kind of goes around here to the left, comes back here, so then we're looking at New Zealand, Australia. Right? Think about, where we live now. So, think about, hey, we're here in Kentucky. The kinds of things you see in your backyard, if you go to the park, if you go to Bernheim Forest, whatever, right? The stuff you see, the plants and animals you see, and how different those things are going to be if all of a sudden you go to the east coast of South America or New Zealand or the outback in Australia, right? Those are very, very different kinds of habitats and different things you would see. Hey, up around Cape of Good Hope in southern Africa. So there's not a whole lot of Africa on this voyage, but just a little bit at the southern tip there at the Cape of Good Hope. Notice there's really not much Asia in this trip as well. Okay, so a little bit with Africa, back across to South America, and then back up towards home. All right, so basically 5 or 6 years on this voyage and go into all these new places. So, and I should finish my little chart that I was making. So Galapagos Islands to Australia, Southern Africa, back to South America, and then home. Right, so lots of new and different places. So I'm going to take a second because I honestly, to be perfectly transparent, I didn't think far enough ahead to grab a couple pictures I wanted to grab. So I'm going to pause this for a second. Don't go anywhere because I am coming back and I'm going to talk to you about a couple pictures, but I got to go get those pictures first. So be right back. All right, class, I'm back. At least I hope I'm back. Looks like I'm back. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few things that Darwin encountered. And the things that I'm going to show you are things he encountered in this part of his voyage. So down the eastern coast of South America, and then at the Galapagos Islands. All right, so keep in mind as I show you these things, the ideas of you see things that are completely new and different, you've never seen before, but you also see some things that kind of look familiar, right? So, number one, this is a fossil of something called a glyptodont. Now, perhaps no one who's watching this has ever seen a fossil of a glyptodont or even a picture, a diagram of a glyptodont. These are extinct. Even if you've never heard of this thing and you look at it, look at the animal. What's it make you think of? Right? So hopefully some of you came up with the idea that this kind of looks like a giant oversized armadillo. That's what it looks like. And there are armadillos in Great Britain. So this is one of those things that when Darwin saw this, he thought, well, and he saw the fossils, not the real living things, but the fossils. You know, he saw these glyptodont fossils and thought, well, this looks a lot like those armadillos, except these things are gigantic, right? So then what he started thinking was maybe these are ancestors, right? Maybe these are extinct members of the lineage that leads to current day armadillos, which is what mammal biologists think now, is that the glyptodonts were ancestral armadillos. Okay, so again, it doesn't always have to be what looks different. Sometimes it can be the fact that this reminds you of something. Here's another example of that. Okay, when you look at this, this is a South American rodent called a nutria. Okay, so same deal. When Darwin saw this, he said, hey, you know what? This looks like the beaver, which again they get in Great Britain, so he would have seen those. Hey, but remember, if you've ever seen beavers, beavers have flat tails. And look at this tail. That's not flat. Right? So it looks similar to what he was used to seeing as a beaver. Same kind of habitat. Check it out. It's a good swimmer, right? It's kind of the same size, like fairly big rodent. So kind of the same size, yet a little bit different. So why? Like, why would this look like the beaver? Not exactly 100%, but most of this looks like what the beaver looks like. And he decided then that the answer to that had to be the environment, right? These things are living in similar habitats, fresh water, like fairly shallow water, what they're eating, the fact they have to swim, all that stuff led to these things looking similar. And then this was on the Galapagos Islands. These are called Darwin's finches. Okay, so it's this whole big family tree of finches. And here's the Galapagos Islands here. And I missed a couple little ones up there, but you get the idea. So that's the Galapagos Islands. And what he noticed is that when he would go from one island to the next, that at least some of the bird species in this grouping were different. So I just show you on color. So like if he found the blue one here, then he didn't find the blue one anywhere else. So you go to the next island, you expect to find the blue one, you find the orange one. Right, so there were those differences, striking differences in which finches belong to which island. And the ultimate idea of why this was true was food, the food resources. The food that was available on each island. And he noticed that the beaks of these finches were adapted for whatever that food resource was. So if it's something like eating a seed, eating a seed, we would end up with like a big fat bill that would kind of look like this, right? If it was something that was trying to pick insects out of a twig or a tree branch or something, then the beak would be really thin and slender, skinny, like that. So differences in how the beaks evolved, all based on food. What is it eating? How is it obtaining that food? So again, another really big deal of, the environment is shaping what these animals look like, right? Because of the food that's available and how they have to eat, that shaped the morphology of what these things were looking like. All right, so that's a little bit about HMS Beagle.